It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. From Fantatrax TV, this is Good Morning Tatooine!
Good morning, welcome to the live stream. We're back once again with your weekly recap of everything Star Wars. So what have we got coming up on this week's show? First up, we'll be looking at Light and Magic, the ILM documentary. Lawrence Kasdan's been speaking to StarWars.com about that. Ewan MacGregor's been talking about whether there'll be more ObiWan Kenobi. And Oscar Isaac's also been talking about potentially returning to Star Wars. We'll be giving our thoughts on whether those actors will be back in the Star Wars galaxy sometime soon. Genevieve O'Reilly has been talking her role of Mon Mothma in Andor, which comes to Disney Plus in September. Star Wars Revelations, a new one-shot Star Wars comic from Marvel, is going to give us some clues to the future of Star Wars comics. We've had an excerpt from The Princess and the Scoundrel, which arrives in bookstores this week. We'll be checking that out, and we'll wrap up the show by looking at the Saturn Awards, where 10 nominations were received for 4 of Star Wars Disney Plus shows. To discuss all that and much, much more, Becca Benjamin, hello and welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. This is so exciting. You guys are just so professional. I love the whole beginning. And it's like, oh, I feel like I'm on a real news station. This is so exciting. I mean, you guys are, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. We get professional to a point and then it all falls apart.
That's how it always goes with everyone. I know, I get
it. Obviously, you've got your own podcast as well, Tarkin's Top Shelf, amongst many others that you're involved in. Tell us a little bit about the podcast to start with.
Well, Tarkin's Top Shelf is a Star Wars literature podcast. So we definitely just basically go over all the books, and they can be canon or legends. It does not matter. We also go over comics, graphic novels, the visual guides. We interview authors. We just have a good time. Sometimes we'll even just bring on fans or other podcasters to talk about their favorite Star Wars book. So basically, it's for the most part literature, but we do try to connect with what's really going on in the live action, the animation, and we bring it all in. But just a lot of fun.
Yeah, and just I was listening to your previous episode, and you're looking at the literature connected to Andor, which obviously comes up in September. So that's a good starting point for people if they want to pick up something and get connected to the characters again. Ahead of the show.
Yeah, there's a Catalyst, which came out, I think, like 2000, whenever Rogue One came out, 2016. So there's Catalyst, which is a prequel to Rogue One, and then there's Rebel Rising by Beth Revis, who also wrote The Princess and the Scoundrel, which takes place when Saw picks up Little Jin and raises her in that story. So good stuff to read beforehand, definitely.
And you're involved in the Podathon as well, coming up in September.
Yeah, that's to benefit Make-A-Wish, and that's, for the most part, that's through Around the Galaxy with Pete Fletcher. He organizes it. I'm part of the planning committee. So if you just go on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook at the Podathon 2022, all the deets will be there. Ryan Johnson is helping out with that, so he'll be on, which is pretty huge. I believe there's a few guests I can't announce yet because they have not been announced yet, but Kristen Baver is taking part in that. So yeah. Oh, and happy birthday, Kristen Baver.
Yeah, happy
today
birthday.
is her birthday. So yeah, lots of guests will be rolling out. I believe Christopher Sean was announced, and obviously you know him from Star Wars Resistance, the animated show there. So
so a lot of fun to be had there. They always put on a great show, and we'll be reporting as the guests are announced. We'll have them up on fantatracks.com so people can keep track of the announcements as well. And so I think we should get stuck straight into this week's news. And first up, Lawrence Kasdan has been talking about light and magic and ILM and his involvement with the documentary. Obviously, he kind of discussed the fact that ILM wasn't a big thing for him when he got involved with George Lucas to start with, obviously through Indiana Jones and then Empire, that he kind of just ignored them and let them get on with it. And I guess in some respects that's maybe the best way for creative, because they were given tasks that in the documentary showed, it was like, let's do this. Nobody knew how, but just you guys get on and do it.
You know, and it's fascinating because I just want to say that was blasphemy to say that. But you know, it's interesting to see how creative a lot of them were as kids. You know, like you're watching their home videos, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're so talented. Like, and it just blows your mind. And some of the stories were just phenomenal. How they got into it, and you know how things looked in the beginning, and you know where they come from. Because I'm going to be honest with you, I did not know Pixar was George's at one point. I didn't know that. So I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. But yet at the same time, that makes sense. So there was a lot of neat details and just the involvement and how things got developed. And I can definitely agree with a lot of them when they said that their awing moment when they knew things had changed was when they see the T-Rex in Jurassic Park. And I'm like, yes, because I was a senior in high school. I know I'm totally dating myself when that came out. And I still remember because I went to the midnight showing, you know, because that was a thing then. They don't really do that anymore. Not here in the States anyway. But I remember driving home and constantly looking in my rearview mirror thinking I was going to see a T-Rex chasing me. So, I mean, and still for me, that's the best one out of all of those. It's the original.
The
so,
bit I
but
love
that's my
about
opinion.
And I was watching it just the other week, that Sam O'Neill and the way that they sort of reveal the dinosaurs at the start, we are Sam O'Neill when it's revealed, because we were all so blown away in the cinema to see what they'd created. And you think about that, you start these projects not knowing how they're going to deliver, and they end up building all these tools in order to deliver. Like Photoshop was kind of born out of the guys working at ILM, and you know, it's just a tool that everybody kind of uses, and we don't even think about it anymore. And it's just we need something to be able to manipulate images and all these kind of things that we don't think about how they were created. And it was so fascinating to get an insight into ILM with this documentary. And it kind of felt like Lawrence Kasdan was the right person to do it, because he wasn't there at the conception, so he was kind of going on a little journey in the documentary with us and learning a little bit about how it was formed. And
it was definitely.
He kind of talked a little bit about the genesis of the documentary as well, and he'd been working on another documentary, and they started talking about whether they could do one with ILM, and at the same time Ron Howard was setting up Imagine Documentaries. And Kasdan said it was like being invited back to his old high school, you know, and it was like you can imagine him sort of rediscovering all the stories about how things were made back in the day, and the evolution of it. It would have been, I think, a lot of fun for them making it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even like I said, you know, just watching it there's a lot of things I just didn't know, or maybe I had heard before but forgot. And just watching it, because it was a very long documentary series, and you can't help but binge it because you get so hooked into it. Even just the morphine in Willow, that was just like, oh my gosh, that was so cool. And it, you watch it now and when it was done, but yet somehow it still works after all these years. It's just kind of mind blowing.
Yeah.
They're that talented.
And we're seeing it again now. I think a new generation is starting to see ILM in a new light as well, in terms of with Disney Plus and the volume, and then really pushing the envelope again of what you can deliver on small budgets very quickly for television.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, I mean, it's come a long way, but I really think it's cool when they still go back to their roots to do something. It's nice to see that. I mean, I'm probably still one for practical, if we can get it, if it works. I think that's the coolest thing. But I was also raised on the Muppets, so that probably has a lot to do with it.
And I think that's the fun thing about ILM, is that they're not just involved in the CGI side of things, they're still involved in the practical.
Yep.
And I still have great fun watching, the footage from '76, and they're making the original Star Wars films, and they're flying TIE fighters on wires and driving past in cars, blowing up bits of Death Star. Great fun. Absolutely. I agree.
Moving on,
we mentioned Disney Plus, moving on to our next news story. Ewan MacGregor's been talking ObiWan Kenobi. He's on the convention circuit, which is on the back of Celebration. New to him, he's doing, I think it was Colorado he was in it, and he's doing one in Scotland in October. And he was asked about whether we'd come back to ObiWan Kenobi, and he made a comment, he's totally up for it, he wants to do it. There's no plans yet, but I'm pretty sure they're just biding their time. So it feels incredibly positive. Although I guess I should add the caveat that he's been wanting to go back to the role of Obi-Wan for quite a number of years. And it took a long journey.
I feel like I'm having deja vu with this again, because they've been asking him that for years. And then when he was finally able to talk about Kenobi, so here we are once again back in that position again. Here's the thing. I would love nothing more to see him. Because to me, Ewan and Hayden are, for me personally, from where I stand in Star Wars, they're the dream team. I mean, I cannot get enough of those two together. So yeah, if they have a good story and it makes sense, I say do it. He's talented. Everyone knows who he is. He's a wonderful actor. He's going to be able to pull it off, especially where they ended. I mean, if you can bring him in training and communing with Qui-Gon Jinn, I would spend money just to watch them have a back and forth, like for a few episodes. I'm okay with that. But that's I know that's fan service to a lot of people, but like I said, if the story works, I say go for it.
And I think that's what's going to drive it more than anything. It's a case of everybody knows that everybody involved wants to do it again. We need to find the right moment and the right storyline to bring the team back together. And maybe Disney Plus creates a time pressure because it's always looking for new content, and it's an easy way to dip back into something that's proven to be successful for the platform. But it's a case of maybe pushing back up against that a little bit until you find the right story. And I think Deborah Chow and Kathleen Kennedy both said that on the press tour, that it's all about the right story. And they took a long time on I'm going to call it the first series of Obi-Wan. That's a bit on this series it's gone. And they mentioned a lot about finding the right reason to bring characters in, like Darth Vader, like Anakin.
Yes.
And I think we're maybe going to see that journey maybe again over the next few years, where they're developing something to the point that, this is the right moment, this is the right time to bring them all back together.
I agree. I just don't see bringing Hayden or Ewan back for 6 episodes of something and not using them somewhere else.
Yeah.
We might actually see them in other series that they're going to do. I really do have that feeling, especially with the Ahsoka series. I think Hayden will be in there at some point. But who knows? I could be completely wrong on that. But that's, like I said, you just don't bring someone like Ewan in for just that.
Yeah.
There's got to be something else. But
and Rob there in the comments kind of echoed your kind of point there that there's nothing wrong with fan service if it's done right. And I think that's very true. You can do fan service and have way that's really delightful, I think. And,
I agree.
And it works for the story. As always, when actors are on the circuits, they get asked if they're open to go back to Star Wars. Oscar Isaac, incredibly popular actor at the moment doing films, TV. He's been asked if he would go back to Star Wars. Again, I guess in his comments he was a little bit more reserved. He's open to anything, you never know. Very non-committal. I think any clever actor never says no unless the script and the contract's in front of them. Not so sure if we're maybe at the right juncture to venture back to Oscars. And the Poe Dameron storyline, it's a difficult one, I think, in terms of anything sequel trilogy. I think's going to be a more difficult sell at this point of view. It kind of feels like it needs to go on its own journey, similar to the way the prequels did.
Yeah, here's the thing. Oscar is such a talent. To not use him would be kind of just silly to me, and what a waste, But again, I really felt that they would have developed him more, especially since in the books that were following the sequel trilogy, Leia was so building that character to take over because she knew she was only here for a limited amount of time. Well, real world things obviously had a big effect on that, but in the storyline, she was definitely working her way up to get him to where she is. So I think you could do something in between, and I know, or maybe, right after she recruits him, which would happen before the sequel trilogy too. You could tell that story. You can make him look a little younger if you needed to. Heck, they didn't need to do that with Ewan and Hayden, and it still worked for most of us. We didn't care. So I think Oscar has that youthful look about him anyway. Whether you don't have to keep his hair peppered. He can color it, I just think there could be a story there if it's right. But again, it would have to be a development for that character because I think they missed the mark on that with him.
I think there's probably an argument to be said the character was developed more in the comics and the books than it was on film.
It was. Yeah, definitely. And he deserved, to me, being who he is as an actor, he deserved more screen time. Yeah. So,
and I think that's maybe what would hold him back from doing something. I think he would want something that felt special. To maybe dip back into it. I can certainly see a Poe-centric series on Disney Plus. I think, as you said there, that the way that this kind of, sort of signposted the direction of the character is going to go in, and his rank and his position within Resistance and what comes next beyond the Resistance. There's options there. The comics and the books have done a great way of developing a backstory for the character as well, and there's lots that could be dipped into that as well. So,
I agree.
And I did wonder in the back of my mind is whether they talk about the Rogue Squadron film and where that's going to sit in the timeline, and could Poe feature in that in some degree, maybe not necessarily as a lead, but as some kind of cameo that could lead to something else, because I keep having this feeling that movie is going to lead to a TV series of some kind. It kind of feels like Rogue Squadron lends itself quite nicely to TV.
I think it would, and I think just by the title of it, I think Poe needs to have some sort of a part in that. It would make the most sense to me. But just because it makes logical sense to you and I doesn't mean that's where they're going with that. But I mean, to me, like I said, he was brought in to the sequel trilogy through Leia recruiting him due to his pilot skills. I mean, that's where that started, not because he was a leader in that way, but it all started because he was a pilot. And I think having a pilot-centric story and not including him, especially in the timeline where he's still actively there, you kind of miss the mark there.
Yeah. Mark making a comment there that most of what we know from the Clone Wars comes from an animated TV show, not the films. And it's a good point. There's a lot of what we know about Poe has come from different avenues, and there's definitely scope to build on there. So I'm kind of hesitant. I don't think there's anything in this story as to anything happening anytime soon for Oscar.
It's probably just talk.
A few years space, and I think something could certainly happen there, and Rogue Squadron perhaps seems the most logical destination for them. Something that is definitely happening, and we'll talk about next, Andor. Despite a delay. It's a slight delay. We've got to wait a few extra weeks. So everyone now needs to change their holidays to take the 21st off so they can watch the first 3 episodes, because they're released 8 o'clock in the morning UK time. So it was great when it was Mandalorian and so on coming out, and it's 45 minutes. You could watch it before you head to work. Can't watch 3 hours before I head to work. So
Nope.
There might need to be a holiday that day. Genevieve O'Reilly's been talking her role of Mon Mothma in the series. And this is a role that I'm really excited for, because the prequels were always criticised for its sort of political element of its storyline. And it's just something that I've always enjoyed in Star Wars. And I think we're actually going to see it portrayed on screen here in reasonably interesting detail, and certainly around the birth of the rebellion. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And then she kind of comments here, you're going to meet her on Coruscant, a high society world of intrigue and politics. What do you think about getting Mon Mothma back in a really significant role on TV?
I am so excited. Actually, we just discussed this on Tarkin's Top Shelf, my co-host Mark Suter and I. I love what we got to see so far of her character, and I'm so excited to finally see this character on screen, because we've been following her in the books. You know, the Aftermath trilogy, she's very heavily involved in that. We get her in just recently, The Princess and the Scoundrel. She's very heavily in that. Not that I want to spoil anything, but it would make sense. That said, I told Mark, and I'll tell you, I keep going back when I see those snippets of her in this trailer. Her saying, I got to keep being this irritation so I can keep doing what I'm really doing, the stuff I can't talk about. It reminded me of the Revenge of the Sith novel, Padme's long dialogue that gets cut from the film. Yeah. And it's when her and Bail Organa are sitting in their Senate pod, and the announcement comes across that, we're now the Galactic Empire. And she goes, well, this is how liberty dies, with thunders of applause. But she goes on and she tells him, basically she's letting him know, I'm not going to be here too much longer. So you and Mon need to keep doing all those things that we can't talk about. Keep your heads down, be good little senators. And when the time's right, you need to act. So watching these scenes, and I'm getting goosebumps of seeing Mon say these things, I think to myself with teary eyes, thinking, Padme would be so proud of you, because you're doing exactly what she set you guys up to do. So I'm thrilled to see that story unfold, because we know who set them up, who was actually the one proposing that whole movement. It's in the deleted scenes. That petition was led by Padme Amidala. And Mon is filling that position. I always say to myself, had Padme lived, what Mon is doing, that would be Padme. So I'm excited to see someone carry that torch forward. I cannot wait to see what she does with her role. I can't wait.
And I think the element that interests me as well is we're going to see Scoundrel in it as well. And so we're going to see that kind of conflict amongst the people who were trying to create this rebellion as to how the rebellion should take place. Whether it should be political in nature, whether it needs to be military, a combination of both, when to act, and so on as well. So I think there's going to be a lot of fun in this series, seeing all these different elements in play.
And I came prepared. Isn't that cool? So yeah.
And I think this is something I think we often miss as well, in that especially with more recent developments, and we've got so many publications coming out, we instantly give everyone a story. But when you look back to the original trilogy, Mon Mothma appeared really from nowhere at the time, instantly significant from her role on screen, very short appearance, and then sort of nothing sort of that built on that at that time, and then revisited 20 plus years later in the prequels, again, fleeting cameo. And how many years are we now on from the prequels? It feels probably like another 20. And that she's back again, and maybe this time we're now actually going to get her story.
And I think we will. And I'm really hoping that we get a cameo with Bail. I think it would make sense, again, not just to use him for the Kenobi series, but why not bring him into this?
Yeah.
I cannot picture Mon not having him as her sidekick in all this, because it would just make the most sense. They were there when everything was started. And I know we're probably going to hear things that we, are secret, and what's really going on and how in depth they really are at this point. And I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be just an amazing, like you said, it's going to be definitely political, but Star Wars has always been that way.
Yeah.
And just seeing these images that we got, these newer ones, they're beautifully done. So I'm tickled. Like I said, I mean, Rogue One is probably, for me, my most watched Disney Star Wars film that they've made so far. So I'm definitely captivated already. And all we've gotten was a trailer. So.
Yeah. And obviously we've seen the flashes of the Senate. And this is a comment I always throw out there. The Emperor was democratically elected. His powers were given to him democratically. So, it's going to be interesting to see how they play the role of the Senate in a time when he's in power. Because you've got this kind of whole act in it playing that he's your leader that you elected, and you're not quite being dissolved quite yet. You're all got to play in line because you've got this fear of him, but at the same time you're playing to him as well. So it's going to be
both sides.
There's a lot of interesting politics to be there, and I kind of hope a little bit. I don't want him to be in it too much, but I kind of hope that Ian McDiarmid's going to be in it as well. Kind of feels like it would be really nice to have a scene with him and Bale and Mon Mothma, and just the real politics at play, like just a really slimy performance.
It sounds so intense, like right there, like you could just feel that tension. And I think, if they're going to do this story right, I think that's almost like a given. Like you need to have a moment like that. But like you said, there's so many different characters playing different sides. Like this new character we're getting to see, Luthen. I mean, I just don't feel he's playing two sides. I feel like there's also a third or possibly a fourth. And I'm excited to see where this is going. I mean, it's espionage, you know what I mean? That's what Rogue One was about anyway. Yeah. So I'm very curious to see where this is going. Yeah. And yes, we do need to see E.T.
Yeah. You never know. E.T. could have a major role. You never know.
He could. They have a lot of them. Maybe we'll get to see more Yoda creatures.
Left the Star Wars galaxy to head towards Earth just to escape the Emperor. Never know.
Never know.
So Andor, it comes 21st of September, so we've got a little bit of wait to come. I'm kind of looking forward to it. I'm nervous about the scenes shot in Scotland because every time I see it on screen, I just see that's my back garden.
But is that really a bad thing?
Yeah, I can't get that out of my head, so I'm going to have to get past that part of it. And but once that's gone, I think I'll be properly immersed. It was just very difficult watching the trailer for the first time in the first shot. So yeah, I can see that from a bedroom window. It's like,
I need to. You're lucky.
Yeah, I need to escape that a little bit. Yeah, Mark mentioned it as well. Can you imagine Bale and Mothma in front of the Emperor? I think that could be something special if they have that, and I kind of hope that they do. Less certainty as to what's happening in the future when it comes to Star Wars comics. But interesting reveal this week on StarWars.com about its future. There's going to be a special one-shot coming in November called Star Wars Revelations. And it's going to sort of set up the future of Star Wars comics coming in 2023, and they're going to use the Eye of the Webbish Bog on Mustafar, a mysterious creature strong in the Force, who's going to show Vader the past and the future, and the little elements of the future that Vader sees is going to be what we can kind of expect to see the direction of Star Wars comics heading in 2023. So quite a tease here coming, and an interesting way of previewing what's to come and get people excited for 2023 comics.
I am excited about this. My only disappointment is that it's not live action series. It's all in comics. It's like, and that's a very small group or small audience of fandom. But I'm excited for these stories. I like the idea of seeing it through Vader. He is, to me, because I'm a huge Vader girl, so he is the center point of Star Wars anyway. So, and I like the idea of them using the Webbish Bog almost as a physical world between worlds, in a sense, being able to see past and future, because that's exactly where I go. that's why Dave did that to me. So that's Dave's fault. But I think that's an interesting way to possibly use that. You know what I mean? Because let's think about it. He gets to see these things. Now, is he going to share that with the Emperor, or is he going to keep that to himself? I mean, he would do best if he didn't share that, because let's be honest, seeing the Emperor the way we did in Rebels, with that series or that episode of The World Between Worlds, he was upset because he couldn't access it without Ahsoka or with Ezra. So knowing that in a way, Vader has a way to tune into the past and the future that the Emperor does not, I think that's actually for him to have a high ground in a sense for the first time. So I'm interested to see where this is going to go. I love the stories that they're featuring on the cover. You get Vader with Sabe. I've got so much to say about that. I love, getting more Afra. I think there's so much that could be done with that character. I would love to actually see her go from comics to live action. I think she's worthy of that. I mean, we got Cobb Vanth, who was just an interlude in a novel, and look at him now. People just adore that character. Now you have this, you have Afro, who's been in comics for how long now, and she's got such a huge following. Put that character on screen.
She seems like the most logical move into live action out of everyone in publishing at the moment. This kind of announcement came at an odd time for me, because I kind of made the decision last month that I'm stopping collecting Star Wars comics. It's kind of been what I've done for my whole life. I've got literally every variant from 1977 till now, and I've been a completist, and I decided no more at the end of this year. And I was literally picking the endpoints, which is really difficult because there's a lot of ongoing comics, like where'd I end? And so there's a few miniseries kind of ending October, November, and that's kind of been my endpoint. And I was kind of hoping, of all hopes, that they would announce that they're going to reboot everything to issue ones, and it would make my life easier. I would feel like I've completed and not just stopping at some point. And I think after 35 years of collecting, it's really hard to say no more. And
but are you starting back up now?
No.
Oh, okay.
And like, my decision's got nothing to do with Star Wars comics in particular. It's got more to do with the comic industry and the way that it's gone, and store variants and people buying for value rather than what they call the key collector covers. And that whole thing it's changed since lockdown, I think, began, and the whole nature of comic collecting's changed, and it's just not something that I enjoy anymore. I think this past year, when there's been, 40 covers with Boba Fett on it for one issue, and 45 covers with Mando on it for issue 1 of Mando, it's like, it's no fun, there's no variant, nobody's doing that for the art or the enjoyment, and that's just a cash chase kind of exercise. And as a completist, it just becomes, why am I spending this money?
It's too much.
Yeah. So
I get you.
I'm still going to be reading the Star Wars comics, just going to be doing it in a slightly different way. So I was particularly interested by this announcement, and I like the way they've done it, and they're going to give something to tease what's going to come in 2023, and hopefully it catches people's imaginations. I think they're doing it in a relatively clever way. But
I do too.
I'm not sure that I've been enjoying how they're connecting all the ongoings together, the likes of using Crimson Empire and so on. I kind of feel like limits the characters a little bit and pulls them into a storyline they maybe don't naturally fit into. So I would like to see the characters freed up a little bit more in 2023 rather than pulled together.
I agree, because isn't this all following right after Empire Strikes Back? So there's only so much you can do in between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And that's what I've always said. They got to get out of that original trilogy era. Move it.
And that's kind of where I thought they were going to go, and I thought maybe this is an opportune time to stop, because they're going to go post Return of the Jedi and start back at issue 1s again, and I thought that's a nice endpoint, but they're not giving me that.
They need to go there, though. There's too many years. There's too many years they have nothing there. I think the problem perhaps is, and I think this is maybe buying them an extra 12 months, is I don't think they're clear in their mind where they want to go post Return of the Jedi yet. It still feels like that era between Return of the Jedi and the sequel trilogy, they still feel a little bit uncomfortable about storytelling in that era. So, we'll have to wait and see where they go. It feels like they're going to stay another 12 months in the Empire era
but we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong.
I'm ready for new stuff, though.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Next in Star Wars literature world, it's been a good week for literature fans. We got an excerpt from The Princess and the Scoundrel. It arrives in bookstores. It's the 16th in the UK. I think it's the same in America. And Leia and Han, in their honeymoon aboard the Halcyon, I had great fears when I read the original plot for this book, because I thought, oh no, it's not going to be a Disney marketing exercise and we're going to get a A to Z tour around the hotel. But it doesn't appear to be that way. It's looking a little bit slightly more positive.
Yeah, we talked off air. I'm going to keep this as spoiler free as possible. I don't want to spoil anything. I did finish the book. Our review will be out on Tarkin's Top Shelf on Tuesday when the book drops. I can wholeheartedly tell you it's the way the Halcyon's used. It works with the story to move the story along. It's not a marketing ploy. I was scared by that too. My also concerns was, like I said off air, I was worried about how far they were going to go into romance. Like I said, my reading of romance novels, that ship has sailed a long time ago. So I don't like too much mushiness, in my Star Wars. I know what happens. It's there. But this, I'm going to tell you, very well balanced. So don't, if you don't want a lot of mushiness, as Han would say, it's not there. So you're okay. For the most part, I enjoyed the story. I think Beth did a wonderful job with balancing everything. That said, the way it ends, I know you were just talking about hoping to get stories post Return of the Jedi. She leaves a very wide door open for that. And I don't want to say what she leaves it open for, but it's very Luke and Leia centric.
Okay.
And I'll leave it there.
Yeah, that's a nice tease, I think. It's probably since the courtship of Princess Leia, there hasn't really been a Star Wars novel that's kind of been pin-marked as almost like a romance. So it was interesting that they chose to go that way. You kind of alluded to that they didn't go too heavy in that direction.
No,
the
not
balance
well.
was
You have to
right?
remember where they are in their timeline is, everything just happened. Vader is gone. Emperor Palpatine is gone. Anyway, so everything's happening quickly, right after that. So, and technically we all know from comics and whatnot and from video games, the war's still going on. There's still some remnants of the Empire. Obviously it's fresh. They're still following, Emperor Palpatine's laws and orders and what he had set up in case he were to die. They're supposed to do that. So you've got all that going on. And, propaganda right now is a big thing to try and show that the New Republic is starting to build and trying to spread that positivity about joining the New Republic and all that. So there's still a lot going on. There's still a lot to be done. So it's still very fast paced. There's still things and work to be done. So that, again, if you've ever seen the story of Padme and Anakin, how much time did they get together when they was in the middle of the war? So you have to look at it that way. There's, like I said, there's a lot of stuff happening all at once, which makes it fun.
And I think in this novel, it's probably the longest time you're going to see Han and Leia actually in each other's company.
I will not disagree with that. Yeah. I think you're probably right. We know
positives and bad things in every relationship, isn't it?
And that's just it. They both have their own thing, and they both don't want to give up their own thing. And we know that from the sequels. So,
yeah. And we spoke about earlier as well, and author Beth, she wrote Rebel Rising, which ties nicely back into Andor. If someone wants to pick up, it was targeted for young readers, but a great novel. It stood in its own right as well. So people could also be picking that up ahead of the show, dropping on the 21st. Princess and the Scoundrel out on the 16th. Definitely want to pick up. A little bit different from the usual Star Wars novel fare, I think it's fair to say. And new and different isn't necessarily bad.
No, and I'm going to say this, out of the new run of Disney novels, the cover art on that book is absolutely phenomenal. It's probably the
Yeah,
best one I've ever
yeah,
seen. It's absolutely gorgeous.
yeah.
And
I
yes,
do.
Rebel Rising's fab.
I do like the ones where it almost feels like oil painting type covers, rather
Yes,
than the ones
yes.
that are sort of feels a little bit more like sort of computer generated collages. This one sort of kind of feels special.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
Last news story of the week, and Star Wars has been doing well on Disney Plus, and it's shown on the Saturn Awards. It's received 4 of its shows. A whole host of its actors have all picked up nominations. I'll have a quick look at the ones, and we'll see what we think of them. Under animated series Bad Batch picked up a nomination. I think most people agree. Most people probably enjoyed Bad Batch, I think. Science fiction series on a streaming service. We got The Mandalorian, again hugely popular. For a limited event series on streaming, you had Obi-Wan Kenobi. Actor in a streaming series, Ewan MacGregor for Obi-Wan. And
Yeah.
what else did we have? Actress in a streaming series, Ming-Na Wen for the Book of Boba Fett. That one maybe surprised me because I thought she never got enough to do in the Book of Boba Fett. Fantastic actress, but I thought her character deserved a little bit more there. Moses Ingram for Obi-Wan Kenobi and the supporting actress in a streaming series category. Performance by a younger actor, Vivian Lyra Blair for Obi-Wan Kenobi. I don't think anyone else can deny that one. But then I thought she's a shoo-in to win that category, and then you start looking down the list and you bring in all the Lost in Space, Stranger Things, Hawkeye, Miss Marvel, and you think, wow, child actors have had a phenomenal year. And guest performance in a streaming series, 2 Star Wars nominations in there, Hayden Christensen for Obi-Wan and Rosario Dawson for The Mandalorian. My personal shout there is I wished Hayden got slightly more to do in Obi-Wan. I think the story was right in not giving him more, and I think he did well with what he was given. But I'm still surprised by maybe that nomination. I thought Rosario Dawson for The Mandalorian richly deserved. I thought that was a phenomenal episode, and I take that from the viewpoint that I don't really watch animation, so Ahsoka didn't mean that much to me, but I thought it was a great episode. So, your thoughts on some of those shows and some of those actors?
Well, connecting with what you're talking about with The Mandalorian, with Rosario, and then Hayden, I think it's interesting to see them both nominated in the same category because they are friends. They go back a ways, and I think that's great. And I think either one would be happy for the other. It wouldn't matter. But I think Rosario, obviously she's almost the A-list standards of acting. She's been in so much, and she pulled those emotional strings for me, not so much in The Mandalorian as she did in the Book of Boba Fett. And the 2-part arc that was her, and Din and Luke, and of course Grogu, because you can't forget Grogu. But that was something, again, a wish list for me as fan service. I always wanted to see Ahsoka with Luke and possibly with Leia, and to hear her talk to them about their father. So I got everything I wanted in that episode, and then some. Like, it was one of those things I had to pause every few seconds, every few words, and just cry and then go back. So I was like, I couldn't believe what's happening. But I did the same thing, though, with the dialogue between and the confrontation between Hayden and Ewan, as Vader and Obi-Wan, with the cracked mask, and being able to see him and him to get that apology. That's something, again, I've been wanting to hear for him.
Powerful moment.
And it was very powerful. And again, I wept, so I think they're judging it based on certain key moments, not the whole thing. And I can see him getting something, even Ewan. I mean, that whole moment was just like heart-wrenching,
Yep.
and it meant something to the both of them because they are friends too. So you got that chemistry automatically going on. But all the, like you said with Ming-Na Wen, like we talked about Oscar, I feel like, you've got this talented actress who can do so much, not just physical. Because I've seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Holy cow.
Yeah.
I love Agent May. You know what I mean? So it's like, where was all that? Like, I mean, I think personally she could stand on her own in her own series. And I would love nothing more than to get that. Obviously, we're going to get her again in The Bad Batch. It makes sense. But that's animation. I mean, and it's voice acting. I'm not saying that's, there's anything wrong with voice acting, but there's something, it's different when you're actually in the character and on screen as that character. But yeah, I love seeing all the shows nominated. The Vivian one with all the, child actors and actresses. There's so much talent right there. I mean, all of them, Sadie Sink. I mean, oh my God, they're all phenomenal. And yes, I absolutely adored Miss Marvel. I wasn't going to watch it, but I did. And the whole the whole matriarch story of it, I was in, and I loved learning about a culture that I don't know so much about and walking that journey and seeing the mother interact with her daughter. And it was just phenomenal. So again, there's so much talent in all these nominations. It's like, I would not want to be the one making that decision. No. So
I can see Rosario picking up the guest performance award. Ironically, I think Hayden could pick it up for Ahsoka, because I'm really expecting him to have a lot more to do in that series, and I think if we give it to Rosario this year, Hayden can have it next year.
Yeah, and again, the same thing. They will automatically have that chemistry on screen because they are friends, and I think that's like, again, why would you not bring that in? Yeah. I mean, it's just going to naturally flow, and I think if they didn't do it, they'd be missing a mark. Who doesn't want to see Force Ghost Anakin Skywalker, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think congratulations to everyone that's been nominated and everyone involved in making those shows that got nominations as well. Quite an achievement. I think Disney had quite a wealth of nominations, I think, across not just on TV, but for film as well at the Saturn Awards. So a lot to be proud of the people involved in all those productions. And that is us kind of wrapped up the news for this week. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Oh, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, and look forward to checking out more of Tarkin's Top Shelf. Look forward to the Podathon as well, coming up in September. And we'll be back hopefully next week. I'm not planning on having a live show next week because I'm actually going to be on vacation, hopefully. And hopefully meeting up with a few more of the Fanta Tracks team whilst I'm away. But I'm planning on having a recorded show out next week. So that is the plan. If that goes wrong, we'll be back the following week. So thank you once again. And we'll see you all very soon.
Bye.
Keep up to date with the latest Star Wars news each and every day on PanthaTracks.com. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Tumblr, and Pinterest at Fantha Tracks. And be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and follow Fantha Tracks TV to be alerted to new content and be a part of our live shows.